Right, this is the fifth chapter, the final chapter here that I'm going to go through. And this is on word grammar or word patterns. I call it word patterns. Later on in this chapter, they actually use the word pattern. But this is a very interesting and a very important area that not many teachers cover and not many students know about. When I teach my students about this area, a lot of them start to understand English a bit better. Okay, so let's start with task 1. Combining nouns. So nouns can be combined in basically 3 ways. Firstly, it could be 2 nouns connected by preposition, like the discovery of is a preposition, and then another noun. It could be 2 nouns connected by apostrophe, migrant's passage. It could just be 2 nouns connected together without any apostrophe, without any preposition. Okay, so so this is another case of observing what you see in the text here, and it's short text. So for one, what examples are there of 2 nouns connected by a preposition, or noun phrases connected by a preposition? Okay, so you have years after the discovery. Okay, years, and after is the preposition. The discovery is a noun again. Migrants from Europe. From is a preposition. Dangers of migration. Passage to North America. Okay, those are connected by preposition. Then you have years, wages apostrophe, and the third one you have farm labor. Both of them are nouns. Okay, then it comes to task 2, noun followed by a noun complement clause. Now, you don't have to worry so much about the name of this. In fact, some books and some authors may name it differently, but the point is that you have a pattern whereby after a noun, it what comes after this noun is a that plus a clause. So the clause is another subject plus verb. Okay, so that is what, it's talking about, a that plus a clause. So hopefully you've read all this already. Okay, I'm not going to go through all this, but the question here, 2.2, basically it's asking you after which of these words, which of these nouns, because we are focusing on nouns here, has this pattern that after the noun you can have a that plus clause. Okay, so which has these patterns now? So if you go to belief, that plus clause, so that's possible. Notion. Now, notion, you don't have notion, that plus clause, right? You have a notion to do something. Now, that's where I told you in the introduction that you don't just want to use Macmillan. It's not as comprehensive as Longman. So if you put notion that, if you look at this, the patterns that Longman gives you, that, and then you have the preposition. Later we'll see the noun plus the preposition here, and then here in a Macmillan dictionary gives you the noun plus the to plus base verb. Basically, these are the 3 main patterns which you will see very shortly here. You see, for a noun followed by preposition, a that plus clause, or to plus base verb, or to plus infinitive. Infinitive is the same as base. Okay, so what we get here is that in this dictionary Macmillan, the only pattern that they show you is the to plus base verb after the noun. In this dictionary, they show you the preposition, and they show you the that plus clause, which is what we are talking about here. So what this means is that sometimes dictionaries focus on different areas. Again, if you don't see the pattern or the collocation or whatever in the dictionary, doesn't mean that it's not possible. You can't use it that way, no, because the dictionary is not going to tell you every single thing and every single way it's used. Okay, so why does Macmillan give you this pattern 2 plus base verb, whereas Longman doesn't? It gives you the two other patterns, the that plus clause plus the preposition. I don't know. Okay, they have their reasons, but yeah, that's the way it is. Okay, so this is also, if you just look at Macmillan, then you may not put a tick here, but actually you can use the that plus clause. In fact, for all of this, okay, let's go to theory. You will see that all of these words can use can be followed by a that plus clause. Okay, they don't put the clause there, but it's understood. Okay, so basically this is tick 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 all the way. Okay, let me just try to explain a bit. Okay, let's talk about suggestion. Okay, what does this that plus clause do? What is it trying to do? Basically, let's just read this. As you can see in the two examples above, the clauses following the words belief and theory provide the content or the meaning. Believe that the truth is generally preferable to lies. Now, what is this that plus clause? Especially the clause. The clause is providing the content for this belief. Theory that blah blah blah. What is all this? It is providing the content for the theory. What is the theory? Many medical conditions were caused by viruses. Okay, so that is this, whatever you want to call this pattern, that plus clause, it provides for at least a noun. Okay, because you will see this pattern, that plus clause, for verbs and also for adjectives. Okay, but for noun, this for when you have a that plus clause after a noun, it provides a theory. So let's look at the word suggestion. You can say he gave a suggestion, full stop. So you have your subject, your verb, and your object, which is a noun. But you can kind of expand it and use that pattern. He gave a suggestion that we should visit the boy today. Okay, so what is that? This is that plus clause, we, subject, verb. So what is we should visit the boy today? That is the suggestion, right? It defines, it provides the content for what, for that noun. Okay, so not here you see that all these nouns have this particular pattern, but not all nouns have it. I mean, you can go to, for example, I don't know what noun. I mean, you can just put any noun in. Of course, not every noun will have that pattern. House, okay. I mean, it's not a very good example, but of course you don't have that pattern. Okay, so sometimes if you want to know whether they have this particular noun has this pattern, you just have to go through a dictionary. Okay. Next, other noun patterns. Okay, so as you mentioned, the common patterns are after the noun you have a preposition, which is after the preposition is a noun or a gerund, which is a verb in the ing form. The second kind of pattern is that plus clause, which is just mentioned here. Third kind of pattern is to plus infinitive or to plus base verb, just like this. Okay, to plus base verb. And lastly, you have the WH word plus clause or preposition plus WH word plus clause. Okay, that's not so common, right? So the task is really to just look at this sentence and look at the underlying noun and what kind of pattern is possible with this noun. Okay, so for claim, for be, you have claims that, so it's to, right? That plus clause, and then you have the clause here. Okay, so claim is a noun, by the way. Claim can also be a verb, but here we're using it as a noun. Claim that. Okay, the bracket here means it's optional. You don't have to use a that. C, suggestion that, so it's a to again. D, hundreds of off, off. So what is this? This is the preposition. 1. Okay, for both of them, hundreds off, and that, and analysis off. System off is 1 again, the preposition. The reason why, which is that's the so here. Okay, number 4. G, reasons for. This is the preposition. Okay, so preposition is 1. Reasons for. So if you go to the dictionary, you can see that you have reason for. So reason, you can have why, you can reason, you have for. Okay, so you can see some each word can have different patterns, not just one kind of pattern. Okay, as we've seen already with the notion, notion to do, notion that, and notion of. Question of, so it's preposition. Ways of, so it's also preposition. Limits on, it's a preposition, different preposition on. Limit on, amount of. Lastly, doubt, that, what number is that? That is 2. Doubt, that, and then history of 1. After the noun history, you follow it by a preposition. Okay, and to continue on here, 1 solution to, now this is a bit tricky. All right, what pattern is this? Some students will use the 1 solution. Some students will say, oh, this is the 2 plus base verb, because they look at the 2 here and then they look at the 2 here, and they're gonna say that, okay, this is this pattern 3, but that's wrong, because this 2, and you have to remember that 2 can be a preposition, 2 can be be part of the pattern 2 plus base verb. Okay, so look at number 2, all attempts 2 plus base verb. So now this is the 2 plus base verb, 2 plus infinitive, 2 plus base verb, the same thing, pattern number 3. Okay, so 2 here is 3 because it's 2 plus base verb, that's the pattern. But this 2 is a preposition, because you know that after 2, if it's a preposition, after the preposition there'll be noun. You see, the spread, that's a noun. So this is actually a preposition pattern. Okay, after the solution you have a preposition pattern. 3, suspicion that. Okay, so you have that pattern. 2. 4, risk that, again a that pattern. 5, that pattern is 2, right? Yeah, that's 2. Reduce the risk of, as a preposition. 6, root of, preposition. 7, permission to take, that will be the 2 plus base verb, right? Which is 2 plus number 3. Yep. So 2 plus take, the base verb of take. Remember, base verb is the verb without the ing, the ed, the s. 8, intention to introduce, again 2 plus base verb, 2 plus introduce. 9, mechanism to share, 2 plus base verb, 2 plus share. 10, extent of, it's a preposition, of is a preposition. 11, way that, that will be that plus clause, so it's 2. And lastly, 12, no way to bring, that will be a 2 plus base verb. Okay, so these are the patterns for these nouns, right? The same thing for this as in the previous chapter. Just go to OSTIC. This is one way you can actually mark it. So what kind of nouns could go with market? market price, market value, market conditions, etc. Okay, so I'll just leave that to you. You can go to Austic to do this, right? The next is adjectives. So we did above was the nouns, the noun patterns. Now we're talking about the adjective patterns. Okay, as you can see, very similar. That to plus preposition. So A, necessary for, that will be a preposition, so we go 3. B, necessary to rethink, that's a 2 plus base verb, that will be 2. And you realize here that again one word could have more than one pattern. So this is a preposition pattern, this is a 2 plus base verb pattern. Let's just go to necessary. So you have your preposition here, and you have your 2 plus base verb. Sometimes you can just leave the word for someone. You can say it is necessary to do something. C, difficult to see. That's a 2 plus base verb. Difficult for is a preposition. Okay, so again, 2 same words, different patterns. E, E, internet makes it possible for, again this will be preposition, and then another possible, this one's another pattern, that, which is number 1, F, number 1. Okay, so that and preposition, number 1 is that. And G will be clear. Again, you have 2 of the same words, so just to demonstrate to you that there could be more than one pattern. Clear that. H, clear 2. Now what is this 2? Is this 2 plus base verb or 2 as a preposition? To all, this is a noun, so it's 2 plus preposition. 2 as a preposition, sorry, so 3. This 2 is a preposition, so it's 3. I, likely, 2 plus base verb, 2 plus infinitive, 2. And then lastly you have likely that, right, which is 1, right? So likely that. So likely could be a 2 plus base verb, could be that, right? And if you go, this is the last section on adjectives, and you have 5 adjectives here, and you have 4 questions. Now, this first question, which of the adjectives can be used in this pattern? It is what for someone to do something. Now, this is a very common adjective pattern, okay? It is easy for someone to do something. It is possible for someone to do something. Okay, this is a very common adjective pattern. It is plus adjective for someone to do something. Just now we saw it, right? Necessary. So this has this pattern. Okay, so the question is, out of all these words, 5 words here, which one can actually be used in that pattern, right? And now it could be more than one, not just one alone. Okay, if you go to Longman or Macmillan, you will find out that which of these words common, 3 of them can be used. Useful, customary. Okay, only these 3. You can't say it is bound for someone. You can't say it is certain. Okay, which of the adjectives can be used immediately before a noun? That means, remember I mentioned that and one of the common positions for adjectives is before a noun or after a verb, after the verb be. But not all can be used, not all adjectives can be used before a noun. And basically, which ones can be used before a noun? Almost all of them, except for the bound, the word bound. Okay, so 4 of them can be used before a noun. Now, 3, which of the adjectives can be used with that plus clause? Now this is a bit tricky, because most students, if you would put common there, It is common that people wear, I don't know, wear warm clothes during winter. Okay, so I'm using it is common that people wear warm clothes during winter. It is adjective plus a that plus your clause again here. Most students will say this is okay, that you can use common with the pattern of that, but actually that's wrong. The pattern for common, let's just go, you don't have common that. Okay, you have the first pattern just now we mentioned, common for someone to do something. You don't have common that. So the only word here that can be used with that after following it, the only noun, adjective here out of this is certain. Okay. Lastly, which of the adjectives can be immediately followed by to plus? Now this is just to plus infinitive, is not it is. It's just immediately followed by to plus infinitive, right? And the answer to that will be all of them. Common, bound, certain, useful, and customary. All right. Okay, carrying on. Now we move to verbs and verb patterns. We've already done nouns and their patterns and adjectives. So we're going to move to verbs. And one of the main things you need to understand with regards to verbs and the patterns for verbs is that you have to understand the difference between a transitive verb and an intransitive verb. Okay, so it's described here what a transitive and intransitive verb is. And a transitive verb, you need a direct object, and intransitive you don't, right? So for example, sometimes you will, if you say John hit full stop, it's kind of missing something because you need to hit someone. Okay, so this verb here is transitive because you need an object. Whereas if you say John slept full stop, that's fine. That's okay. There's nothing missing there. Okay, you don't need an object. All right, so that word, that verb sleep is intransitive. Okay, now, so a lot of times you will find that words are always transitive. Some words are always transitive, and some words are verbs, I should say, because transitive or intransitive only relate to verbs. So some verbs are always transitive in all its meanings, whereas some verbs are always intransitive in all its meanings. Some of them are like that, but for most verbs you have both transitive and intransitive uses. Some meaning you can use it in a transitive way only, and then other meanings could be intransitive, or even the same meaning could be used in both transitive and intransitive, in an intransitive and a transitive way. All right, so let me just go through. Say you take the word sleep. Just now I said sleep is intransitive. Actually, that's not true. When you use it here, it's intransitive. Okay, but there is a transitive use, which means that there's an object, direct object after that, and you don't really use it, but you don't really use this meaning, but it's there. Okay, and let's look at the word hit. Let's have a look. Okay, so the first meaning, to touch someone with force, can be used in both a transitive and an intransitive way. Okay, I'm not sure how it's used in an intransitive way. Okay, because all the uses here are so far transitive. You hit something, all right? So I'm not really sure how it's used in an intransitive way. Let me try to look at this a bit more. Nope, I don't know why it says intransitive. Maybe there is a rare use of it being used in an intransitive way, which means you don't have an object after. But all these sentences here, it's you always see you hit someone or you hit something, right? But anyway, there are words and there are verbs that, like this. There are verbs, again, I'm not sure, to suddenly start to affect. Okay, since the storm hit. Okay, here, you see this is used as an intransitive way. There's no object after that. But here, there is an object. England is the object. Okay? So some verbs are always transitive, some verbs are always intransitive, but most of the time, verbs have transitive uses and have intransitive uses, right? But of course, in the context, in one situation, if you are given a text like this, there's only one use of it. All right. So, for example, spurred here is fresh analysis. Okay, that's transitive because this is the object, right? So going through this, let's just, what is this? This is 7.1. Let's quickly go through whether go through the answers for this. Took place. Let's look at took place. In. So once it's followed by preposition, remember if a verb is transitive only if directly after you have that noun, that object. If you have a preposition, it's considered intransitive here. Okay. So took place here is intransitive. Flowing. What is this? A preposition. So again, it's intransitive. Next, including the California program. So you would see that including is, you have an object including something, right? So it is transitive. Next, offering some tentative responses. So there's an object offering responses. Is transitive. Answer. Now this is a bit tricky. You have an object. This is actually used. This is a relative clause. Questions that researchers must answer. So you must answer questions. Okay, even though you don't see the object directly after, is actually all the way here because you're using a relative clause. So it is transitive. Come up with policies. So it's transitive. Improve school achievement, so it's transitive. That's object's achievement. Accomplish the greatest good, here is used as an object. It's transitive. Accomplish good. And gain the greatest benefit, so it's the object, this benefit, so it's transitive. Okay. Going to 7.2. You are going to separate this, divide this into two columns. Some, again, this is where some are always, I mentioned that some verbs are always transitive or intransitive. So these verbs are always one or the other, right? So what are the transitive verbs? Okay, describe, you could describe something. You have an object. Now, this is a tricky one because most students will get it wrong. You lack something. Okay, lack here is a verb, not a noun. Okay, I'll get to that later when I talk about lack. Verb or lack is a noun. Okay. What else is transitive? Now, of course, you can just look at the dictionary. It tells you straight away because these verbs are verbs which are either one or the other. Mention. He mentioned something. And suggest something. Okay. The rest are belong, because you belong to, right? If you know that this verb comes with a preposition after, normally, then it's always going to be normally intransitive. Okay. Describe is transitive. Interfere. Why? Interfere with, right? So you don't have an object there. Remain in. So remain with a preposition. Result in preposition. Rise in. Okay. So these are all intransitive. You do not have an object. You don't rise something. You don't result something. You don't remain something. You don't interfere something. You don't belong something. You belong to. You interfere with. Alright? Whereas you describe something, you lack something, you mention something, you suggest something. Okay? For the transitive verbs, you can always put an object directly after. This one you can't. Okay? That's the difference between a transitive and intransitive verb. Right? Cars. The cars on display look as if they belong to, and interfere is going to be interfere with. Right? Go to 7.4. You see the word govern is here and here, and spread is here and here. The whole point of this exercise is to show you that sometimes a similar verb could be used in a transitive. This is intransitive because there's nothing behind is intransitive. Spread from is a preposition, so this spread is also let's put it intransitive. Okay, we put VI for intransitive. Okay, because there's a preposition, there's no object directly. You don't spread. At least it's not used here in a transitive way. It's used as an intransitive way. 3. Succeed. There's nothing behind, so it's intransitive. There's no object behind. 4. Here is intransitive too. There's no object. 5. Tended. The most seriously injured. Here's the object. So this is transitive. You see that here is intransitive, here is transitive. 6. Believe something, so it's transitive. 7. Govern the import. The import is the object. You govern something. It's transitive. As you can see, this is an intransitive use. This is a transitive use. 8. Spread the workload. That's transitive. And this is transitive use. This is the intransitive use. Right? Next, we come to verbs followed by that plus clause. Just now it was verbs. Just now you had the pattern for nouns and verbs, and nouns and adjectives. You also have the pattern that plus clause, and verbs you can also have the pattern that plus clause, and that's very common. All right. We always use it. I think he is good. When you say I think he is good, that is really I think that. You don't have to use that. Because it's in brackets, okay, but it's basically using this pattern, that plus clause, which is a clause against subject plus verb. Okay, so the only 3 verbs here that can use this pattern is state, consider, admit. All right, these are the only 3 verbs. The rest you can't use that pattern. You can go to the dictionary to find it out. Right? And which of these verbs, underline any verbs followed by that plus clause. Let's quickly go through this. Believe, there's no that plus clause here. Remember, the that could be there, it could be missing, but it's a that plus a clause because the that is optional, and very often speaking we don't use it. Okay. Agree that. Okay, so you can use the word agree, suggest that, mention that, claim that, discover that, accept that, know that here. It's not concern that, it's concern. Express, well, you're talking about a verb. Concern here is a noun, so we're not looking at that. Express, okay. Some people have expressed concerns. There's no express that. Can you use express that? All right. Let's go to express as a verb. Let's see if we have a that. Okay. It doesn't seem to, you don't seem to have the that. So you don't say he expressed that. Okay. You could say he said that. He mentioned that, but you don't say express that. Admitted that, you can use the verb admit with that. Now, claim to have, there's no that here. But let's have a look at claim. The verb claim, you can use that. It's just that in this sentence, they are not using claim with the pattern that. All right? Now, before I go into this, I actually forgot about talking about lack. Because when I ask my students to write, please come up with a sentence with the verb lack, all right, I get a lot of sentences with the word lack of. Firstly, when I tell my students, please come up with a sentence with using the verb lack as a verb. Firstly, they use it as a noun because they are not aware of what they are not aware of the sentence structure. All right. If it's used as a verb, it has to come after the subject, right? Okay. So firstly, they may say something like lack. He had a lack of whatever. Okay. Now, firstly, this is not used as a verb. This is used as a noun after the article. It's used as an object, which is a noun. Right? And of some students may say something like, he lacks of common sense. So what they're using is lack is used as a verb here because this is a subject, this is the verb. So it's correct, it's used as a verb, but it's used wrongly. But a lot of students will use lack of. Now, why will they use lack of? Why will they use their sentence lack of, whether this lack is used as a verb or a noun? But they will always, most of my students will use lack of because lack of is a common phrase and you hear it a lot of times in many sentences with the word lack. But you have to realize that lack as a word has two word classes, verb. It's both a verb and a noun. But when I put lack here, the noun always comes out. Why does it always come out first? Because it's more common than lack as a verb. That's why it comes out first. And that's the reason why we always hear lack of. So when I ask my students to write, please write a sentence with the verb lack, they will use lack of because they hear lack of a lot. And lack of is fine. But it's only fine if it's used as a noun. Alright? Because when it's used as a verb, and we already mentioned this here, when we use lack as a verb, lack is actually a transitive verb. What is a transitive verb mean? It means that after that you need an object. After that you need an object. You cannot have a preposition that it will be intransitive. So when you want to use lack as a verb, it will be, rather than he lacks of, is he lacks common sense. Okay, directly this is the object, no preposition in between the verb and the object. Okay, so be careful. Even though you hear lack of, are you aware that when you hear lack of, the lack is being used as a noun? And if you want to write a sentence with lack as a verb, you cannot use lack of because lack is a transitive verb. Okay, so awareness, observation, noticing all these things, all these grammar points are very important if you are going to write well. Okay, so let's continue on. So there are verbs which are followed by the WH words, like some of these. Who, where, when, all this. Okay, some verbs. Okay, so if you look out, you look for the entry for explain. Well, you don't have the WH. Oh yeah, WH, explain why, explain what. Okay, this is a common pattern. All right, so what is the task here? Consider. So you can go to consider. Okay, consider. And then you look at consider whether, consider, well, what are the WH? Consider whether, that's the most common one. Okay, maybe if you put consider here, you may get other verbs. Consider whether, consider where, consider how, consider why. You see, Longman is kind of more comprehensive. Okay? And so, yeah, you can just go to the dictionary and look at all this. There are a lot. Go to Longman because it's a bit more comprehensive. All right? And lastly, for this, I'll go through this too. He's just basically rearranging and using this pattern with a verb that goes with a WH word. Okay, so number 2 is we need to discuss what kind of strategy we want for next year. So discuss is the verb what. Okay, next, many people doubt whether the new government will live up to the promises made in the election campaign. Doubt is the verb whether. The candidates are usually asked to describe why they would be suitable for the position. Describe, verb why. Five, the IT manager is considering whether the system currently in place should be updated. Considering is the verb, whether is the WH word. Finally, people have a right to decide what they should do with their own money. Alright, so the verb here is decide, and it comes with what. Okay? Alright, so let's just finish this off. 3 verbs that can be followed by that. If you want to use, there are many verbs here, but from this chapter, you show, argue, suggest. 3 verbs that can be followed by WH, we just went through that. Explain, ask, discover. 3 nouns that can be followed by that. This is right in the beginning of the chapter. Evidence, suggestion, theory. 3 adjectives that can be followed by that. Clear, possible, likely. And 3 adjectives that can be followed by 2 plus infinitive. Customary, common, useful. Okay, so that's it. This is the chapter on word patterns. I teach a lot more in the class, in my writing class too, but this is a good introduction in a way, or it will help you to clear up a lot of things. The main things are the word patterns that we went through: the nouns, then the adjectives, then the verbs. All 3 of them have patterns, sometimes with preposition coming after, that plus clause, or 2 plus infinitive. Okay, so I hope you realize that words have patterns, verbs, nouns, adjectives have patterns, and you need to understand the patterns, use it correctly. You can go to the dictionary to find out what the patterns are. Okay.